Good afternoon and welcome. Welcome each and every one of you. We are delighted to have you here today at our specially called Global Chamber Atlanta Globinar. This opportunity I could not pass on, and you'll understand better as we jump into the details of this Globinar. So I want to welcome you. And as you come online to our Globinar, feel free to utilize the chat room because that's going to be the area that we have a lot of exchange today. You'll be able to raise questions that you have. You'll be able to post comments. But at the onset, what I would like for you to do is to type your name, your city, and since this is Global Chamber, how we can connect with you on LinkedIn, your business or the organization that you're affiliated with. So we want to welcome you once again. My name is Dana Austin, and I'm the Executive Director for Global Chamber Atlanta. And we are delighted to be able to present this special Globinar for you today. I want to share a little bit about Global Chamber. If you are new to this, we want to be able to give you the information. And as our guest asked me today, how far reaching will this Globinar go? And his face was enthralled when I told him. But yes, we are a global chamber, an organization where our headquarters is in Phoenix, Arizona at the Thunderbird School of Global Management. And we have a mission that's incredible, which is to accelerate cross-border trade and investment in every region of the world. And we do that by engaging in top executives and leaders with warm connections, timely information to grow business, create success, and change the world. Our vision is a business world where it's as easy growing your business across regions or as it is across the streets. We are growing in 525 metros. I'm going to say that again. Global Chamber is growing in 525 metros around the world. So when we say we are global, we are physically have a presence and a representative in those regions. And this is across 5 continents, which our guest today has touched on many of those continents, but I won't peek my hand and I'll introduce you to him first. We're in 195 countries. And yes, Global Chamber, we are the first and only chamber of commerce located in hundreds of metros or areas that is focused on growing cross-border trade and investment in a collaborative way everywhere. That's exciting in itself. Now, as I mentioned, Thunderbird is we're in that headquartered there in Thunderbird School of Global Management in Phoenix, Arizona. We have a collaboration with Thunderbird, which means they're in 15 cities, soon to be 30. And that means Global Chamber has that collaboration in those cities and soon to be 30. All right. I will tell you that Global Chamber Atlanta covers 29 counties. And so we're unique in that fashion that we're not just one city or one county. So we have a far reach even in our Global Chamber. And you know, we have headquarters here for many of the companies that you see on the screen. So I'll share that with you and we'll go ahead and get started and introduce our special guest today. Coming online shortly is our special guest today, who is Captain Will or Bill Pinkney. Captain Pinkney is a legend, rightfully so. He is the first African American to sail around the world solo. I'm going to say that again so that it'll resonate in your spirit. He is the first African American to sail around the world solo. And today I'm going to interview him. I'm going to pose questions, some that you present in the chat room and some that I've also put together, and comments about his experience. And as our CEO and founder, Doug Brunke, mentioned earlier on as we were just starting, the words courage, tenacity, perseverance comes up when you think about Captain Bill Pinkney. And for me, other words that I would associate with him, he is an ambassador for the world. He is a champion for the young minds and business owners and a great person. So today I'm introducing you to Captain Bill Pinkney. And while I'm switching screens, what I'd like for you to do is in the chat room to put your name, your city, and how we can connect with you either on LinkedIn or on your website. Thank you for doing that. And I'm going to read a bit of his bio. And so you can have a little bit more information. Then we'll jump right into the questions, okay? Thank you for that. I will tell you that the ship that he sailed around the world on is named Commitment. And I didn't want to read all of this, Captain Bill. So I'm gonna just start with our questions, okay? Give me just a second. And then we can even check in the chat room to see what comments and questions we have. But I want to introduce him as a U.S. Coast Guard licensed master, solo circumnavigator, inspirational speaker with a background in consumer marketing, presenter to Fortune 500 companies and institutions of higher learning, recognized and congressional record, and heads of state at home and abroad. Presenting the things I've learned at sea as a metaphor for life is his goal, that can bring insight to people in all walks of life that he wishes to continue to achieve. So it really lines up with what we aim for as our mission with Global Chamber. And that's bringing insight and making connections. So I introduce to you Captain Bill Pinkney.
How do you do? Very pleased to meet you. A little bit of housekeeping. First of all, there are many people who have sailed around the world solo, but the specifics of my trip are the fact that I rounded Cape Horn, which is at the bottom of South America, and probably one of the most treacherous bodies of water in the world. Second of all, I am not only the first African American, I'm the first Black man of any nation to complete that 5 Cape circumnavigation. And believe me, it was exciting.
The first of any nation. That's
Yes.
exciting on so many levels. And when I think about your journey and your story, I want to ask this question. What was your inspiration for deciding, after having served in the military, that you were going to take this journey? And at what age did you decide to do it?
Well, the motivation was that when I turned 50, I realized that I lived better than half my life. And if I had anything that I wanted to do, it was time to get going on it. And one of the things I wanted to do was leave a legacy for my grandchildren. They weren't going to get any money because I'm going to spend all of that. But what I wanted to do was give them a benchmark of achievement that they could go after. And I decided, of all the things that I could possibly do, which was a short list, sailing was at the top of that list because it was a love of my life since I was a child. Although I did not get to sail till later in life, I did my around the world, my solo circumnavigation at age 55. So for those of you who are hesitating about what to do, hurry up. 55 will be on you before you know it.
Wow, that's incredible. At the age of 55, you started this journey where some people are just basically saying, you know, I'm almost done with what I'm going to do, or they retire early, as one of our guests we have here in the room with us. No names will be mentioned, but you were starting the next chapter of your life, of your beautiful, rich life. And with that, that's an encouragement, that's an inspiration to each of us in business. We'll start a business, or young people that are thinking about what they should do. You were passionate about sailing. Now, what I did is I put together a few words that I thought would be good conversation starters, just one worders based on regions. But before I hop into that, I wanted to know, you tell us where you were. Well, here it goes. Here's the first word, Chicago. Whatever comes to mind, yes.
Well, Chicago is my hometown. Matter of fact, I am a 3rd-generation Chicagoan. My grandfather, father, and mother were all born in Chicago, so that Chicago is in my blood, although it's not where I live. The winters are too cold for that. But Chicago was where I got my basic education and where I first saw the sea, which was Lake Michigan, which is 300 miles long and 90 miles across. So it is an inland sea. And I used to sit on the beach near my home and wonder what was on the other side of that water. And it took me a while before I found out. when I joined the Navy, I did in fact find out that there was a lot on the other side of that lake, and there was a lot on the other side of the world as well.
That's incredible. You have definitely traversed more than 300 miles in width and 900 miles in length, if I've got that correct, many times over. So Chicago is a place where it all started for you. The next word, trigger word I have is Boston.
Well, Boston is where a couple of things that are important happened. Firstly, Boston was where I got my major support to do my solo circumnavigation. Unfortunately, something like this is not something you can reach into your piggy bank and start off with. You need a lot of money because you need, first and foremost, the type that can do it. And those boats are not cheap. And it takes a lot of supplies and logistics to make that happen. My first sponsor, major sponsor, was a group in Boston who put together a organization called Combos Limited, which was made up of four men who pooled their funds and financed the major portion of my trip, which included the boat, insurance, food, logistics, all that sort of thing. And they put that together. The third thing that Boston meant was that I was able to get the children of Boston and their public school system to become involved in being the ones who were part of the group that watched and followed my trip around the world. Also, Boston was the place I started my journey and ended my journey between 27 and 30,000 miles later.
It's incredible. You know, one of my favorite quotes is by Covey that says, start with the end in mind. And surely when you started this journey in Boston, you had the end in mind. You weren't really sure. I know you have to map out your plan, but even when you plan, you still have to be prepared for the unexpected. Is that correct?
Oh, well, the unexpected happens in life. Someone said once that, uh, but that the creator laughs when you make plans because you never know what's going to happen. So that's one of the things that I had to prepare for. The other thing that I had to prepare for was something that was, at the time, it felt very grave to me, and that was that what if something should happen to me, what kind of impact that would have on the students who were watching me, because we had just had the disaster with one of the space shuttles where a teacher was involved in it. So I had to make two videos, one in case I was lost and no one knew what happened, and second, if I was lost and they knew what happened. And part of that was making sure that the young people understood that this was my choice, and I understood the dangers and the ramifications of what I was going to do. And I think in all cases, be they circumnavigation, starting a business, changing your lifestyle, is that you have to understand all of the ramifications that can happen and be prepared as much as you can for them. And that's what led me to have to do the videos that we did at the beginning.
Awesome. Awesome. You know, we have some questions that are coming up in the chat room, but I want to do a few more trigger points in terms of regions around the world before we hop on to the questions. So the next one is a beloved country island, very close to my heart because it's also where our father and grandparents are from, Bermuda.
Bermuda was a very interesting place for me because I too have a lot of friends in Bermuda, families, the Parent Chief family and a number of other families that came from Bermuda and were living in New York and were very good friends of mine. It was not my intentional first stop. It happened because I had a mechanical difficulty and I had to pull into Bermuda to correct it with the mechanical and the communications problems I had. And I pulled into Bermuda, and the people there were wonderful. They were kind of nervous, of course, when they saw me, because before I went to Bermuda and I left Boston, I shaved my head and cut off my beard, mainly because that I knew I was going to get salt water in them, so I didn't want to have deal with that during the whole time I was there. So when I came into Bermuda, I looked pretty shabby. I think they all thought that this was my last hurrah. I had some kind of terrible disease, and I was going out into the world to end it all. So
Oh,
that was my arrival in Bermuda. But they were wonderful people to me, and they took care of my problems and treated me like a king, and were really excited for my voyage and when I was going to return, because that was going to be my final stop before I came back to the United States.
absolutely. Well, if you have to make a deviation on your circumventing the world by sail ship, Bermuda is the perfect spot to do it, being a place where they host the tall ship competitions, and you have a host of masters that know how to make those prepares for you. So I'm so happy that that level of hospitality was there, well, waiting on you, preparing you for the next point. So the other two triggers before we start answering questions, and people feel free to put your questions in the chat room or your comments, and we're going to get to those right away. So Puerto Rico, that's the next trigger one.
Puerto Rico, it's a long story. My last duty station, I spent 8 years in the United States Navy as a hospital corpsman. And my last duty station in the Navy was on a ship that was based in Puerto Rico. So I spent about 9 months there working a regular schedule. Since I was a corpsman, I didn't have to work as hard as other people on the ship. So I was off almost every evening. So I got a chance to really get to know Puerto Rico, and I fell in love with it. And when I got discharged from the Navy, probably about 5 months after I left Puerto Rico, I was discharged from the Navy in Bayonne, New Jersey, in a snowstorm. So after 9 months in Puerto Rico, in the lovely warm climate, here I am in a snowstorm in Puerto Rico, out of the Navy, free, single, and disengaged. What do? I get on a plane and go back to Puerto Rico, and I lived there for about 3 years, and that's where I got my initial sailing experience, working on the bumboats that used to take produce and cargo from one of the islands to the other. The islands in Puerto Rico, of course, are Puerto Rico, Vieques, and Culebra.
Culebra.
So I would ride on those boats back and forth and get some experience. And every now and then I get a chance to go to the British Virgin Islands or to St. Thomas. So Puerto Rico was a place I fell in love with. And then I said, when I retire, I'm going to come back to Puerto Rico. And that was in, 1961. And then I didn't get back to Puerto Rico until 1999, when I took an expedition from Puerto Rico to the west coast of Africa. And we started and finished there, came back again to Puerto Rico in 2000 and 2010, when my wife and I moved to Puerto Rico. She had retired from the university in Connecticut. I had retired from the Amistad, and there we are to this very day.
Yes. Well, Puerto Rico has that same effect that Bermuda has on me. I love it absolutely. And as you know, that's where we host our Transformational Writers Conference, helping writers to become authors with our industry experts coming together the first week in December to be able to help move that forward. So it has a greater warm spot for me, because that's also where we met. That's where you also joined and spoke at our Transformational Writers Conference. And that was the trajectory for something that we want to present today, which is your book. So do tell us about Puerto Rico as it pertains to the Transformational Writers Conference, and how did that change the course for you and to what we have now, which I call a treasure?
Well, what happened in Puerto Rico between you and I is that I happened to be on one of the resort islands, one of the small islands called Palomino, and your group was there, I guess, taking a respite after a long series of activities that they were doing in the conference.
We were writing, weren't we writing and working when you saw us?
Oops, I didn't mean to let that get out. Anyhow,
I think we were writing in group. We were doing group therapy.
Yes, they were doing group therapy and research. That's the word here, research. And I was there speaking for a sailboat company that I had done some work for, and they were having a rendezvous for a lot of the owners of those boats, and I was the guest speaker. And we were standing on the dock, and someone said, "Oh, is that your boat?" And
Yes.
I said, "That's not my boat. I just came over for that." And I said, "Oh, you're visiting? Where are you from?" And that's when you told us what you were doing. And I said, "Oh, that's really wonderful." He said, "Well, why don't you come and see what we're doing?" So I came. And after I got there, I sat and listened to the writers and to the people who were understanding publishers. A young man who had developed a new methodology for putting books together, and I have been languishing in writing a book that I had said I was going to write 10, 15 years ago. I wrote a children's book when I first came back from my solo voyage, and it was hosted by McGraw-Hill as part of their Basel reading program in about 5,000 schools across the country. Then later, I wrote an autobiography, and I had wonderful support from that from a dear friend of mine, Maya Angelou,
Yes.
who wrote the jacket cover for me, and some other people who were involved in it. But the children's book that I wanted to write, I kept saying, "Oh, I'm going to write it." And I started out, and I had bits and pieces and papers everywhere to write this book, but I never got around to it. But I got so inspired by what was going on, and the young man who had come up with this new method of putting a book together, and I said, "I'm going to do it." And I got involved. And that was, what was it, in December we
And
did this?
the December 3rd, the last day I think was December 4th. So on December 4th, you went from languishing to being committed. You bought several of our authors and speakers' books, one
Right.
that we actually utilize as a textbook for our 90 days to manuscript that I'm actually in the middle of with a group of other writers. And you read that book, from what I recall, front to back, tagged it, flagged it.
I did, wrote on it, did everything. And from December to May, I wrote an 88-page book for young people from age 8 to about 14, had it illustrated, put it together, and self-published it in that short period of time as a result of the impact of what I found at that conference.
Yes, you did exactly what we had set out to do, which is to challenge people that are serious about writing and getting published, or in your case, published again, to take on the challenge of a 90-day on that journey. And I know you moved through that relatively quickly. You may have had a setback, but like it's been said, a setback is just really a setup for a comeback. So that setback didn't keep you from achieving your goal.
Yeah.
So let's show this prized possession. I have it on my end, and you can show it on your screen as well.
Yeah.
And so the word I'm going to toss out your way now, I'll toss it your way. It's called commitment. But before I get into that, I'm going to read some questions. And I think we can answer them live. I've not done this before, so I'm going to read it first, just in case it disappears. It says, how long was this idea brewing before you did it? And how did you keep hope alive, the idea going? And I imagine this is pertaining to sailing. How long was this idea brewing before 55? And how did you keep hope alive and the idea going? I'm going to click answer live. You would like to answer.
Okay. It started in the 7th grade. I was in the 7th grade, not a student, didn't like it. And I was put in a position of having to read and write a book report. Well, like a lot of students, both in elementary, high school, and college, I understand, I didn't want to read the book. So I would read the first chapter, read the last chapter, and kind of figure out what went in the middle and write a book report. Well, that worked out pretty good for a while till I got to a book by a man named Armstrong Sperry.
Mm-hmm.
And when I read Armstrong Sperry's book, I read the first chapter, I couldn't put it down. I read it completely all the way through, and I related so much to the young man who was in that story, because he was an outcast in his village in Polynesia because he was afraid of the water. And if you live on an island, you should not be afraid of the water. It's what it takes to find food, travel, and recreation. So he was bullied by that. He decided that he was going to leave and sail off and have an adventure and be away from the people that were bullying him. And he did. And he came back successfully as a hero much later with the adornments of a Polynesian warrior with boar's teeth necklaces, and so much. Anyway, I related to that because I had been bullied in the school that I'd gone to before I came to the school where I had to read this book. And I vowed that I would have an adventure just like this young man did. That's seventh grade. Again, it took me to 55 before I really took any action on it. So you can see it was a long process that kept popping up in my mind, and little remnants of it came through in many things that I was able to do. I had many jobs that were very different. I was a high steel mechanic. I was a limbo dancer. I was a
Wait a minute. Wait.
executive.
Did you say limbo dancer?
I was a limbo dancer.
Okay, you know what? I saw some of your dance moves, so don't try to scooch by that. You were a limbo dancer, and based on some of your dance moves that I saw in the last 2 years, you still got moves. So
well,
don't let anybody limit you guys online. Keep moving is one of the goals.
That's it. Satchel Paige, who was one of my favorite philosophers, but also a great baseball player, said, never run when you can walk. Never walk when you can sit down. Never sit down when you can lay down, and never look back because something may be gaining on you.
Ooh.
So that's, excuse me. So that's the adage to have. So I've been keeping moving ahead through life and through the things that I've been able to do, and finding that even in things like in business, it's important that you keep moving. And as you move forward, you'll find that your limitation is only as far as you move forward.
Ooh.
When you stop, it stops.
Yes.
And that was one of the things that kept me going all the way through this.
You are such an inspiration to all of us that are on the line. And two things. One quote that ties into what you just said is the limit of our present view is not the limit of our possibility. The limit of our present view is not the limit of our possibility. And I'm thankful for Armstrong Perry's book, Call It Courage, that gave you the courage to go forth and pursue your dreams. And your book has that very same ability to not just the young, but to those who want to remember to dream and to set sail and to set their dreams aside. What do you hope this book to accomplish?
Well, one of the things I wanted to accomplish, be they young people who read it or adults who read it to young people or adults who read it for themselves, is the word commitment. A commitment is a promise you make to yourself that you will proceed in the direction of your dreams without ever stopping until you achieve them. Now, there may be some things outside of your presence that can stop, but one of the things is the only person that can really stop it is you. The start is you. So once you make that commitment, if you keep it, you'd be amazed at what happens. It may take turns in different directions from where you originally started, but ultimately, if you persist, you can achieve many things beyond your basic idea in the first place. Commitment. And I want young people to understand that, and I want adults to understand that as well, that we all have promises we make. Oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. That's not a commitment. A commitment is sticking to it no matter what, and never quitting.
Wow, I can just breathe that in, and that's just kind of bathing over my soul, reminding each of us that to first start and then finish what we start. Now, I have a few other questions I'd like to take from the room here. And it said, did others discourage you from taking this journey? And if so, how did you overcome the naysayers? I think we still do that today.
Most of the people I said at the beginning of this thought I was nuts. absolutely out of my mind. Well, and for a couple of reasons. One is because of their own fears about things. I think one of the questions people ask me, were you afraid? And I said, no, I was never afraid because fear comes from a lack of knowledge.
Mm,
When you know something about something, you're not afraid of it. If there's a noise outside, you're afraid. But if you look out the door and see it's a cat banging against the door, you're not afraid anymore. The same thing with what happened with me. That was one of the questions. There were people that would see me. I would tell everybody what I was going to do. I'm going to sail around the world. I'm going to raise money and do this. And people would see me coming and cross the street because they knew that's what I was going to talk about
yeah.
because it was the thing I thought about in the morning when I woke up and the last thing I thought about when I went to sleep at night.
Mm,
And there were people who said that success is the greatest revenge in the world.
yes. Yes, it is. Indeed, it is. So you had to take those naysayers out of your mind and keep your vision and your goal. But most importantly, you weren't fearful because you had prepared. And I imagine preparing for a sailing around the world journey, it takes quite a bit of preparation. What amount of time did it take for you to prepare? And we have people on the Globinar from around the world and some parts of the continents that you've sail to. So I'm going to raise some questions around that region shortly. But how long did it take you for you to prepare for this type of journey? And then my question as a woman, and not saying all women pack a lot of things, but I'm just going to speak for the masses. Um, how much luggage were you able to take? And then how many change of clothes? I want to know that.
Well, first of all, it took me, I started the idea in really about 1986. And I started in 1986 with the idea in my mind of what I wanted to do. But I did not tell anyone about it till about 1989. And the reason for that was it took me that long to resolve in my mind that I was willing to pursue this and possibly face death and have that not be a deterrent to my going out there. Most of us think about that termination that we all know we'll make, but we think about it as being 90 years old, lying in a bed, comfortably surrounded by our loved ones, not in the middle of the ocean, thousands of miles from anyone, possibly in a traumatic situation, not with your loved ones, not knowing whether you were alive or dead. That was the hardest part. And I had to resolve that in my mind before I said anything to anyone about it.
Mhm.
And it took me about 2.5 years before I came to that. Once I came to that decision, it never entered my mind again. And that was the part that was the most difficult part to get over. Once I got past that, it was off and running. Packing. Remember, I had a 47-foot boat. I had to carry enough food for me to last and sustain myself for long periods of time. Water, everything. Clothes. Of course, women would think of clothes. Who was I going to dress up for? I didn't have on Saturday night. So
Another
clothes were the
Saturday
least of
night.
my worries. Yeah.
Well, clearly those clothes were made out of materials that they don't make things up today because they endured the journey, right? Now,
I've got a shirt that still made it.
you still have that. Did that shirt make it into the
Yes,
museum?
no, it's still in my closet at home.
I'm thinking the Smithsonian's going to need one of those items of clothing. And then because I also and many others have an appreciation of fine dining, I imagine you didn't have those opportunities when you're on the ship. So were you mostly eating fish, beans?
Oh, oh, no, no. First of all, I didn't fish. And the reason I didn't fish is when you fish at home and you go out to your little pond and you catch a fish. If I caught a fish, it was probably going to weigh 35 or 40 pounds. And who was going to eat that much fish in any one setting?
I see.
Because I had no refrigeration on the boat. I did eat very well. Hormel at the time was putting out a type of food called prepackaged, uh, not freeze dried, but it was vacuum packed, sterilized vacuum packed meals. it ended up being what we now use in the military called meals ready to eat,
Yes.
MREs. But this was it. So I ate lasagna, sweet and sour chicken. I ate Salisbury steak.
Oh,
I ate. I had
you were you were
mac and
you were
cheese.
gourmet in it. And we thinking you had it
I ate
hard.
very well. No, no. And I cooked my own bread. I baked my own cookies. And every Thursday night, I would watch on a small, compact 8 millimeter television set. I would watch movies and eat popcorn, which I popped in my pressure cooker, which was my basic means of cooking. So I didn't do too bad as far as that was concerned.
Oh, I think you did exceptionally well. There's some people here that has never had Salisbury steak or sweet and sour anything. So to have that at sea at that length of time, I do want to touch on the Cape, um, Cape of Hope. So we have members on in the continent of Africa. So going that route, I believe was the most circuitous, torturous route. Can you speak a little bit?
No, that was
Not that
the
one?
second one. I remember I went, this was my route. I went from Boston to Bermuda by chance, to Brazil, Salvador de Bahia, from Salvador de Bahia to Cape Town, South Africa, the first Cape. The first Cape was the Cape of Good Hope, which is in South Africa. It is not the most southerly Cape of South Africa. There's one that's a little further south, but it is the most treacherous one because it's where the Atlantic and the Pacific meet, and the oceans are not the same temperature, same and same current flow. So it was can be pretty rough. It was called by the Portuguese a Cabo de Tormentoso, which was the Cape of Storms. So that was my first Cape. The second Cape was Southeast Cape in Australia, the southeast portion of Australia. The next Cape I came to was Southeast Cape in Tasmania. And from Tasmania, I went under Stewart Island. And under Stewart Island in New Zealand, I then went to Cape Horn. That is as advertised. It was the most difficult part of the trip and probably the most dangerous because the Pacific Ocean flows into the Atlantic Ocean in an area that's 600 miles wide. It goes from 6,000 feet to 600 feet. So it's like going through a funnel. And the storms and weather goes from west to east. So it was behind me, thank goodness. And you get kind of squirted through there. And I got squirted through there and 20-foot waves, 60-knot winds, and moving pretty fast with no sails aboard my boat. I had sails on the boat, but I couldn't put them up because the wind was too much.
Mm.
So it was as advertised.
Yes, yes. I recall reading that in your book as well. And also I remember our discussion. We were having a discussion in Puerto Rico and did an informal interview with you at that time. And I asked you, how many times did your sailboat get knocked over? And then how do you recover? And your response to me was etched in my mind because it applies to life. Can I ask you that question again today,
Definitely.
please?
Yes, you can. It is very important. The boat was knocked from vertical to horizontal twice. That meant the mast and the sails were in the water and the boat came back up. Because sailboats are designed to come back and sail on their bottom, they have a keel. And then sometimes they have what they call a dagger board, which is a large board that comes down that will press against the water. They are designed to right themselves. My philosophy is that in anything, you should build your life, your business, your activities with that keel, a foundation, be it belief, spiritual, religious, economic, whatever it's going to take for you, that when you get knocked down, it will right you back up on an even keel. And that's the philosophy that getting knocked down on a boat has taught me.
So is that where the term even keel comes from?
That's correct.
No way.
Yeah, an even keel. That means that both sides are in the water.
Wow, this is me. This is like a praise and a hallelujah, you snap for poetry. Yes, that is such invaluable lesson on life that we will get knocked down, but we are also positioned and should be surrounded with that can get us back up and make us even keel. Oh my gosh, we've got a few more minutes of questionings, and then I want to give you an opportunity to share also where we can find your book. I don't know if we can share it in the chat and you see it, but I believe Doug, one of our team members, might put it in there. So let me go with a few of the questions we have here. All right. And you guys continue keeping the questions coming and engaging, and make sure if you want more of this story, if you want an opportunity to not just get one of these for for yourself as a keepsake, this is mine, but I also am picking up some today. We're physically in the same space. I didn't tell you that. Picking up some today for my nieces and nephews because they need to have things to encourage them, just like Armstrong Perry's book. And I believe clearly in books because they matter and they leave a legacy. So here we are. This next question: what was your best moment in the journey?
There were so many great moments. To pick out my best, I can't take out a single one, but I'll give you some examples of what was best. One of the best things is that I got a incredible understanding of our place as humans in the universe. I was off the coast of Brazil, absolutely dead calm. The water was like a mirror. No moon, no clouds. So stars were from horizon to horizon, reflected exactly in the water. So it gave you the illusion of being suspended inside a globe of stars. And when you look at the stars and you realize out there that there's a system that holds all that together. And we, as human beings, for the just minute fraction of time that we're involved in that universe, we are no greater and no lesser than any other part of it.
Mm.
And that gives you not a feeling, I think for me, it was an empowering feeling rather than feeling small and infinitesimal.
Right.
The other time was when I reached down on the boat and I untied it from the dock, because there I was successful because I did what it takes to start it. Many things could have stopped me, but I did what it took to start by untying from the dock. There's a saying that ships and people rust and sink tied to docks. So you've got to untie from that dock, whatever it is, that metaphorical dock that you have, and set about your journey. Those were, I think, the two most significant things that happened to me.
Mm. Ships and people rust when they're tied to docks.
That's
I
right.
don't know if any of my writers that are working on becoming authors from our 90 days manuscript is on, but if they're not, you better believe I will be sharing excerpts from our interview today to remind them that, and myself, ships and people rust when we tie to docks. So we need to unloose and set our dreams sail. And yes, we applaud you even today. We're grateful for that journey that you took, the courage that you had, and the dreams and the commitment that you made. And because today you live to tell about it and inspire others. That's the power of fulfilling your dream and then telling it in the form of a story in a book and creating that legacy for your grandchildren. So yes, you continue to live and you might not leave them monetary, but what you leave them is so much greater, so much greater. I've got a couple other questions. Is it okay if I take a few more?
Sure, I'll tell you anything. I've got nothing but time.
I like that too. One day I'll be able to say that. I do want to acknowledge one of my good friends, and she's a family friend from Bermuda. So she is on. So you are in good, great company all around. That was your first stop on sale. And I have LaWanda Vaught, and our families are like family in itself. So she just said Bermuda.
Yes, yes. The first and last stop.
And she just ordered her book from the link online. So the first purchase was from Bermuda, a
Bermuda.
Bermudian. Yes.
Right,
Thank you so
right.
much, Luanda. And she's also an educator. So I'm sure she'll be taking that book to her students, to her daughter, and sharing it with others because it's powerful on so many levels. Okay, let's see here. The next question that I see in our chat room is, how has the journey helped you create the impact that you are looking to make in the world? Are there any regrets, and what's next? So this must be from our radio host that's on here too, because that's a question I would ask to Jada. So how has your journey helped you create the impact you're looking to make in the world? Are there any regrets, and what's next? Because that's my next question. What's next?
Well, I think the thing that the intention of this was not to make an impact on the world. It all started with a lesson for my grandchildren. It progressed from that to a fifth grade class in Chicago Public Schools and a school I went to. Somewhere after that, I lost control, and it became 30,000 kids. Instead of a 32-foot boat, I had a 47-foot boat. Instead of going through the Panama and Suez canals, I ended up going around Cape Horn. So you can see, you can make plans, but other things happen. What I hope that my writing about what I did and the things that I learned at sea could help someone for their circumnavigation, not of the world, to move forward on their dream and to understand that it's possible, and take some of the things that I managed to learn and use them in their lives. Uh, if that happens with one person, then I think I've been successful in what I've done. My greatest regret is that I didn't do it earlier in life, but that's not quite a regret that I think was bad, because maybe earlier in life I would not have been able to see and understand the ramifications of what I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that was right at the time. So I don't think I really have any regrets. Uh, question some people ask me is, will I do it again? The answer is, I don't have to. I've already done it.
Oh, that sounds like
It's been done.
that sounds like a Serena Williams response. I heard them ask her during her last game that she had. They said, "So, what is it that makes you great?" or something along that line. And her response was like, "Excuse me." No, you don't have to do it again. It's already been done, and it's been done well, definitely.
Yeah,
Now,
that's
Maya
it.
Angelou certainly has served as a muse for me for many years, and
And
it,
for me
and
as
I,
well.
and I know you knew her personally. What kind of advice did she give you?
Well, she said, I have that she wrote me, and she said that I had a responsibility to tell the story of what I was doing and what it could do for other people, and that something that I carried with me as I went out there as well.
Mhm.
Uh, Someone said, and I don't really, well, it may sound self-serving, but this was a definition someone said. It says a hero is someone who goes on a great adventure and returns to tell the story to others so they may do the same.
Mm. Oh, I love that. Oh, wow. Just having come back from Eastern Europe, and the adventures there, and then come back to tell the story, like you said, so others can do the same, that they can create their own adventure and their own experience and come back richer. I'll tie that in with Global Chamber, because when you travel, you open your mind. When you travel,
Yes.
you increase your ability to understand cultures and custom. When you travel, you grow. Same happens when you read, and the same happens when you write. So our final question and statement tonight will be from Dr. Sylvia Calendar. She goes, this is an amazing session. Have you considered, and you met her actually in Puerto Rico. She wants to know, have you considered writing a book of poetry? And this is the mother of Rochelle Carter, whose book you read from cover to cover.
Cover to cover. I don't really understand poetry. I really don't. To me, poetry is rhyming every other sentence. Iambic pentameter is just as well be hieroglyphics to me, because I don't understand that. I don't understand poetry, so I wouldn't try to write it. I love reading it, but it just doesn't formulate well in my mind.
Okay. And well, that's the honest answer, and we appreciate that. And certainly what you're doing and your writing and your style for me, for the book that you, Sailing Commitment, it draws you in. And as a writer's coach as well and an author, I love great writing. It draws you in and it keeps you engaged and it takes you on this journey. So those adventures that Dr. Angelou mentioned to you, and going out and coming back and telling others to do the same, it's in there. It's in there.
But I have a final word.
Please, and then I'll have Doug Brunke, our CEO, or Cesar to make their final remarks and comments.
And this is about the Global Chamber. You are in so many countries, you have so many people about this. In all my travels around the world, I found one thing that ties us all together. We are all more alike than not alike. And here's the example I give. We are all impacted by a group of people who impact our life tremendously. It's a conspiracy. This conspiracy is headed by a group of women called mothers. Everyone has one. There is a school somewhere where every mother goes to learn the same thing, because everywhere I went, when I told this story, everyone nodded and said, yes, yes, yes. Mothers have X-ray vision. They can look through walls, jungles, sand dunes, whatever, and see what you're doing on the other side when you're doing something wrong. Mothers can, in Puerto Rico, and Cesar will understand this, if you do something wrong, your mother can throw a sandal or a shoe around the corner better than the curveball of the best pitcher in the National League. And whack you on the head when you're doing wrong. Mothers can bend light because they can see around corners. Mothers are physicians. They can look at you and say, child, you're something wrong. Come, you've got a fever. Touch your head, figure out what's wrong with you, and do something to make you feel better.
Absolutely.
Mothers are psychiatrists. They can see when you're doing something wrong. And if you listen to your mother's wisdom, 9 out of 10 times, they can tell you what to do and what to think about to help you have a better mental situation. And you don't have to lie on a couch, pay them $250 for a 50-minute hour to get that done.
Oh, you said the truth. Absolutely.
And mothers can always look in your eyes, no matter who you are, be you a president, a Maharaja, a PhD, LLD, DDT, or whoever, and look in your eyes and tell when you're lying.
Ooh.
Mothers can do that. If we could just take some of these guys that are messing up in government and in business, line them up against the wall and say, tell us what your mother tell your mother what you told us. We find out a lot of truth about a lot of things.
Well,
that's universal everywhere I went in the world.
Oh, wow. That's incredible. And that's a great segue for Doug Brunke, our CEO for Global Chamber and founder, to come in and don't start on politics, because we'll have to start another Globinar for that one. All right, Doug, take it away.
What an amazing story. But I would prefer, if Cesar, I presume you're there, we talked so much about Puerto Rico. Well, what was your reaction to your home?
No, that was a cool story. It's not about the sandal or the flip-flop. It's the entire Latin American culture. And you will find a lot of of jokes around in the internet about that. I mean, that's something we all grew up with. So I know I'm a pleasure. I'm happy to hear when I met people like Dana or Captain Bill that they love Puerto Rico and that they really have a passion for the island. That's really encouraged me. So thanks again, Captain Bill, and I look forward to meeting you in person soon.
I have to come over in Ponce and see you.
Yeah, doors are
Well,
open anytime.
Well, he's going to see you in Ponce. You have to come see him, but you also see Captain Bill in Puerto Rico, December 1st through the 4th for our Transformational Writers Conference. You can find us there on transformationalwritersconference.com. You can find his book with the link in the chat. Please go ahead and copy it, save it, click and purchase, and then follow him on his social media platforms. I want to let you know that he and I are actually in the same space. I'm going to go give him a hug and thank him and the rest of you all for being a part of this. So hold tight, Captain Bill.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I enjoyed it. It was a good time.
We're so grateful that you guys are here. Please get a copy of this, and we'll see you in Puerto Rico.
Bon voyage. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
See you. Take care.